Today I've got a build for you made out of pure spite. The first time I played Baldur's Gate 3 Honor Mode, I used an Ice Sorcerer. 6 Draconic Bloodline and 6 Abjuration Wizard. It's very tanky and powerful, but I just found it wasn't very fun to play. The main idea was to freeze enemies, and that didn't happen very often. So I've made a build that can trigger that in a single attack, whether that be on an entire group or just one enemy. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this build is the exact opposite of plug and play. It's got some serious nuance to it, which I'll go over at the end of the video. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, let's cover gear first. For your hat, you're going to want the Cold Brim hat. This applies 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost on hit. Now, keep in mind that does not work with AoEs because it only affects up to 1 enemy per turn. What this is going to allow us to do is freeze an enemy in a single attack with Booming Blade. That'll make sense shortly. For your cloak, you're going to want the Cloak of the Weave, Arcane Enchantment. Okay, higher spell save DC means our ice is more difficult for enemies not to slip on. Armor, we're going with Armor of Persistence. Magical Plate is going to negate the damage from Bleed, which we'll be applying to ourselves. And Blade Ward is going to help us keep Armor of Agathys for a lot longer. For your gloves, Winter's Clutches, that's 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost with any ice damage. Boots, we're going with the Boots of Stormy Clamor. Freezing is a DC 12 Constitution save, alright? If you apply Reverb to someone, they're going to have a penalty on Constitution, so that makes it a lot more likely to freeze enemies. For your weapons, in your main hand, you're going to want a Frost-imbued Slicing Short Sword. We're going to apply that with either the Flail of Ages or the Drakethroat Glaive. You can put the Flail of Ages in your offhand to apply cold to your main hand weapon. In your offhand, you're going to want Marco Heshkir imbued with the Frost of the Dark Winter. That's 2 more turns of Encrusted with Frost on hit. For your amulet, you're going to want the Amulet of the Devout, a high spellcasting, +2 to spell save DC. God's Will is also going to give us a 3rd charge of Channel Divinity on long rest, meaning we can output maximum damage thunder spells thrice per battle, if necessary. For your essential ring slot, there is the Risky Ring. Advantage on attack rolls will activate Deep Flesh Slice from the Slicing Short Sword, allowing us to put disadvantage on enemies when they try and save against being frozen. Second ring slot, kind of whatever you want here, but I'd recommend the Snowburst Ring just for extra ice surfaces. For your bow, this one is very, very essential. We're going to have low dexterity, unfortunately. Hellrider Longbow is going to make up for our lower initiative by adding +3. Some other things you're going to want in your inventory include spiked bulbs. A stack or 2 of these will do just fine. The only renewable source I know of is Omelium in Act 1. They're dirt cheap, so be sure to stock up on them. Level up hirelings to reset merchant inventory. Rinse and repeat till you have a lot of these. They can be used to apply bleed to an entire group of enemies before hitting them with an ice spell for disadvantage on the freeze save. You're also going to want the Spellcrux Amulet, the Pearl Power Amulet, and the Spell Savant Amulet. Pearl Power and Spell Savant I burn into sorcery points. Spellcrux can be useful for level 6 Armor of Agathys or 5 more sorcery points if you choose. I also like to have the Staff of Spell Power on hand for another free level 6 spell slot, either in the form of Aid or Armor of Agathys. You're also going to want the Boots of Striding and the Silver Pendant for guidance. This character has guidance already, but you can use a concentration cantrip to activate the Boots of Striding and then remove them. You'll keep the effects of not being able to slip on ice, and you can use that to give your entire group prone immunity. It's going to be necessary for us since we're using the Boots of Stormy Clamor, but it's very helpful in team play as well. I also like to keep the Flail of Ages and the Drakethroat Glaive in my inventory as well, but you can have an ally do that for you if you want. You're also going to need elixirs of Cloud Giant Strength or Hill Giant Strength. Either is fine, but we're going to need to buff out our Strength stat for melee attack rolls. Alright, let's go through level ups. I'm going to try and go through this quickly. Keep in mind I always put my builds in the description, and I'll also put up photos of my spellbooks afterwards so you can see exactly what I scribed. Now, you can either start the game as a sorcerer or a cleric. It doesn't really matter. It just depends if you want that constitution or wisdom proficiency. Me personally, I'm going with White Draconic Bloodline for Armor of Agathys. For your cantrips, you're going to want to grab Booming Blade since it doesn't scale with Charisma, as well as Minor Illusion for grouping up enemies before fights. Spells, Shield, and Magic Missile. For your abilities. Yes, I know this looks weird, but trust me, it's optimal. We're a multi-class between Cleric, Sorcerer, and Wizard. Now, if I could put all our spells under the blanket of Intelligence, I would, through scribing them. Unfortunately, two of our most important spells, Ice Storm and Shatter, are both Cleric domain spells. If we want access to maximum output thunder damage on frozen targets, we're going to have to give up a little bit. Ice Storm and Shatter being domain spells means they will get removed from our other spellbooks when we learn them through Cleric. There's no way around this. You can't scribe them first or afterwards to try and get them back. They're just gone. You can only have a Wisdom version if you have 8 levels in Cleric. So why not just scale off of Wisdom entirely? Well, Intelligence gives us access to Chromatic Orb, Ice Knife, Arluke's Freezing Sphere, and Ice Wall. The most important from that list is Chromatic Orb Thunder. That is the hardest hitting Thunder spell in the game for single targets, and it has an attack roll. Pair it with Luck of the Far Realms, and you're going to hit up to 256 damage guaranteed from a level 6 spell on a single frozen target. It's not that hard to achieve with this build, and it just absolutely deletes even the toughest bosses. So yeah, we don't want to give that up. We're just going to have to lower some of our other stats and make up for it with items. For Strength 8, we're going to drink an Elixir. Dexterity 12. Okay, our sword is going to scale with strength anyways. Okay, Hellrider Longbow makes up for the lower initiative. Constitution 14, Intelligence and Wisdom both 16, and Charisma 8, since we don't need any of the Sorcerer spells. Level 2, another level into Sorcerer, spell doesn't matter. What you want here is the Metamagic Extended Spell and Twin Spell. Extended Spell is extremely important. It doubles the duration of effects. Now keep in mind, this only works with spells that have an effect on it, like Ice Knife, Ice Storm, Chromatic Orb, Cold. Alright, those all create ice surfaces. Ray of Frost as well, because it applies Ray of Frost. So you can use Extended Spell with that to double the duration. But more importantly, if you're also doing Encrusted with Frost, that will double the duration of that condition as well. From a single cast, you'll be doing 8 turns, which can instantly freeze enemies. Very, very important. Level 3, you're going to multi-class into Cleric, grab whatever cantrips you want. We're going with the Tempest domain. For your prepared spells, you're going to want Create Water, Sanctuary, and Command. Other one doesn't matter. Level 4, multi-class into Wizard now. Grab your attacking cantrips like Ray of Frost. For your spells, okay, Thunder Wave is already a Cleric domain spell, so there's no point in grabbing that. What we want is Chromatic Orb, Ice Knife. Also going to grab the Ritual spells and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. At level 5, Wizard level 2, we're going with Evocation as our subclass. Okay, that gives us Sculpt spells, which allows us to stand within our own Ice Storm and Shatter without taking damage. But most importantly, we're not going to end up freezing ourselves or allies with an Ice Storm. Very, very important for this build. Level 6, dip back into Cleric now, and we're going to take Cleric for the rest of our levels. I'm just going to spam through this. If anything important pops up, I'll mention it, like Destructive Wrath at level 2. Cleric level 4, another cantrip, which doesn't matter. You're going to want to grab the Feat Dual Wielder. Cleric level 5, nothing there. Cleric level 6, we get Thunderbolt Strike, which is really useful with Booming Blade. Level 7, we get Freedom of Movement and Ice Storm. And level 8, the oh-so-important Divine Strike. This is what allows Booming Blade to instantly freeze targets without having to use sorcery points. For your feat, you're going to want to grab Ability Improvement and push Intelligence up to 18. Now, there is also Elemental Adept. I just feel like it's not really needed on this build. I was able to beat Raphael without it. It actually helped not having it in that fight because I was walking through my own ice clouds, which might have killed me otherwise. Alright, let's quickly go through what I suppose could be called the user manual. First, let's look at Spellbook. You can see Sorcerer, Cleric, and Wizard. Okay? These will also be in the description as well, by the way. At least the important ones. So, let's cover our buff routine. Step 1, toss on the Boots of Striding. Alright, I already have Guidance, but if you're using an ally that doesn't, Silver Pendant. Guidance, Boots off, cancel concentration, and there's prone immunity. Now, as you can see, that is a difficult surface, which would become very annoying quickly. If you want the easy solution, use a Camp Cleric. Have them give your entire party freedom of movement. If not, if you're just playing solo, you can use a Supreme Elixir of Arcane Cultivation, because I don't want to waste a spell slot for this, and just cast it on yourself. Alright, next you're going to top that off with an Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength. Alright, our attack rolls are much better, and ice will not affect us. But yeah, if you're running this with a full party, just use a Camp Cleric. You can kick them out of your party afterwards. Okay, now we're going to put Frost on Slicing Shortsword, put on the Flail of Ages. Elemental Age, Glacial Age is applied to the main hand weapon. 1d4 cold damage. You could also put Thunder on your offhand, on Marco Heshkir if you wanted to with Drakethroat Glaive. I just don't feel like it. Now we're going to put on the Staff of Spell Power. You can use this for aid if you want, level 6, or Armor of Agathis, which is what I'm going to do. Alright, there's a Spellcrux Amulet as well if you wanted to give yourself aid on top of that, or anything else. I'm going to make some sorcery points. So we get 1 from Arcane Recovery, there's 2 from Spell Savant, and 3 from Pearl Power Amulet. So put on Spell Savant, burn a level 1, burn a level 2, burn a level 3, and we can also use Spellcrux Amulet. Can't burn a level 6, so I'm also going to burn a level 5, but 8 is fine for this currently. Like, that's plenty, but I'm going to push it further than that. Alright, Pearl Power on, restore level 3, Spellcrux, restore level 5, Arcane Recovery level 1, and Amulet of the Devout back on. Because I'm level 12, and I can use Divine Strike on top of Booming Blade, I don't need that many sorcery points. Alright, so 8 was fine. That's more than enough for all the Ice Storms we're going to drop. Upcasting Ice Storm is one of the worst things you can possibly do. We'll get 3 Prolonged Rest from Marco Heshkir and 3 from our spell slots. I preserve my level 5 and level 6 spells for thunder damage. Alright, last step is Frost of the Dark Winter. Alright, let's go over some of the build functionality. So, Extended Spell works with Ray of Frost, Ice Knife, Ice Storm, and Chromatic Orb Cold. You can use these things to freeze enemies. Before you have Divine Strike, you can also use it with Booming Blade for an instant freeze as well. Ice Knife works pretty well in clusters of enemies, because that can hit multiple people. Chromatic Orb, not so much. Ray of Frost is pretty trash, I will admit. Ice Storm is S tier, because it can hit so many enemies. And Booming Blade is triple S tier, because it almost always freezes them, because you get the reverb on hit on the exact person you want it to, and it doesn't glitch out. So, Encrusted with Frost. Alright, this can sometimes not work how you want it to. The game doesn't always recognize to update their condition to Frozen when you apply enough stacks. That's due to proximity and other factors. There are ways to circumvent that. So Booming Blade by default, actually not by default because we're a Tempest Cleric, we have Divine Strike and Thunderbolt Strike working for us. Both of those things also going off at the same time will more than likely, like 99% of the time, will actually cause the Booming Blades Encrusted with Frost to update. For Ice Storm, Ice Knife, Ray of Frost or whatever, if it doesn't update, all you need to do is walk up to them to threaten them. If they slip on ice, proning them will also work. Same with shoving them. Alright, but if you have a large group of enemies that didn't freeze, for whatever reason, self-casting Sanctuary will also cause everyone's condition to update. Whether that does damage or freezes them, either way, this is how you correct that in case something goes horribly wrong. Now, some strats with this build. Sanctuary is fantastic. Okay, you can wet groups of enemies with Create Water while Sanctuary is up. What I like to do, and you'll notice before some of my fights, is I'll have Autoluke's Freezing Sphere in my inventory ready to detonate. I'll let that degrade a bit before I go into combat, self-cast Sanctuary, and right before it pops, I'll wet everyone with water. You can also use that to detonate a spike bulb that you've thrown onto the ground. Now, enemies that you are not in combat with, neutral ones, the ones that are highlighted yellow. If you throw a spike bulb on the ground and then drop Ice Storm on it, more than likely it will bleed them before they freeze. On the other hand, if you are already in combat, there is no guarantee that will happen. In that situation, what you want to do is break the spiked bulb with your offhand attack before dropping the Ice Storm. That will guarantee they are bleeding first. There's no save against this, they always bleed. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. A lot of testing went into this build to make it as consistent as possible, so there are things I didn't cover just to prevent this from dragging on for too long. But yeah, that's the most important stuff covered, so peace out.